What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Open Exchange. I am Mel.
And I am Shfanta.
Okay. Shout out to all the people that have given us positive feedback up until this point. We've had some good
Yes.
comments about some of the material that's going out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Open Exchange. But I just wanted to give a little conversation, have a little conversation about working with other people's children
Other
because that's what we do. So what do you
people's
think about
kids.
that when you talk about other people's children? Like what automatically comes to mind?
I think about people's, their prized possessions. People, um, people. This sounds so cliche, but people really do love their children. And we've had the pleasure of working with other people's children for quite some time,
Mhm.
and I think sometimes people think that nobody cares about their children like they care about their children. Um, that
Which
fear.
may be true in
Um,
some cases.
in some cases, but I think overall, in terms of working with other people's children, people don't the people that are working with your children, they don't mean them any harm. They really do not. They are trying to provide a service. They are trying to do their job. It is their method that sometimes people don't agree with, but understand that that method that is being used comes with years of training,
Hmm.
schooling, and
Hmm.
experience. Um, and so, shout out to anybody that is working with other people's children, has worked with other people's children, and you know, remember that the children do belong to someone else.
Okay. Okay. I think about nowadays it is more like the dirty work because, and I don't mean that to mean like you know it's rewarding. There's a lot of benefits to it, but it's starting to become more and more taxing the longer that I do it because you just don't know what you're going to get. We're working with people in general. You just don't know what you're going to get. And then working with other people's children, you really don't know what you're going to get. So it is a difficult job in 2024. It used to be not so difficult when we started out,
Hmm.
but it's starting to become more taxing and it weighs on your mental emotional, it weighs on your physical um, the more you do it because it's just a lot that goes into working with other people's children.
Yeah, but maybe the weight comes from because you know now things that you did not know before, right? And so you really are trying to. I mean, I believe this. Anybody that's working with other people's children, they really are trying to handle them with care. Now what I deem like the ultimate care and what one of my former parents may have deemed as the ultimate care, that was the disconnect. But I think because now there's so much noise in the background.
Mhm.
Like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? And let's just be honest. You're not gonna make every family happy. And I think when you talk about the messiness of, I think it's become messy because a lot of times it seems like it's more like we're trying to make people happy versus doing our job. You're not going to be, because, these children come from several different households, and a teacher in their classroom is setting up rules that are going to work for that one classroom. And sometimes people feel differently about the way things are done because they're looking from the perspective of how they run their home. And I'm not saying that people are not running their homes right. I'm not saying that they're running them wrong. I'm just saying I feel like, educators don't get enough consideration for what they do.
Okay. So, what's one tip? We're going to give some tips with working with other people's children. So, what's one tip that you think about that you could share with the people?
People can become very irrational when it comes to their children.
Okay.
It's, um, there's a. I think if parents are honest, there's a fear that the child that I saw this morning and the child that I see this evening, they're going to be two different children. And so I think some parents are irrational because they're operating out of fear, um, and fear of what happened in the past. So a lot of times, some of y'all watching, you already know you are paying for or having to deal with the anger and the frustration that the parent had from a previous teacher, a previous after school teacher, a previous coach. And so that's what I mean by they're just irrational. What they are saying and how they have come to their conclusion, it really had nothing to do with what you did. It's about what they have experienced in the
Mhm.
past.
I see it as more of people see their children in a different way than they see everybody else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you should do that naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from a professional standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
I like when people say, "I know my child wouldn't do that." Well, you don't, you don't really know. I mean, your children are different people when they're not around you, and I think that's a tip to parents, but also people that work with children and working with families and parents. They need to understand that may be the parent's view, that their child don't do any wrong, and that their child they know their child like 100%, and I know my child wouldn't do that. Like, people don't see their kids
The way you
the
see
way
them.
the way I would even say the way that they need to.
Mm.
And I think that sometimes as educators, we are probably a little harder on our kids because of what we see.
Oh yeah, which is not right. It's not right. It's not. It's
I know
not
it ain't
right.
right. I'm just
It ain't
saying that's
fair to
just
them. No, I agree with you, but it ain't. I just think about some things, and it's like I wish it wasn't so. I mean, it's because you do the job and you see so much stuff, and you're trying to provide your children with support, but you're also trying to
mhm.
be rational thinking when it comes to your own kids.
Yeah, you try to be real. And sometimes people that don't work in that arena, and sometimes people that do work in that arena, work in our arena, they don't see it. They just don't see it because it's their child.
Yeah, nah. If
They deal with other
yeah.
people's children
Hmm.
differently,
Hmm.
but they don't deal with their child
Yeah, but I think
in
some of that
reality.
too is their fear of, because educators are bad about this, you equate a child's behavior for how their parents. So they do this behavior, they say this thing, they do something bad. Obviously their parent is not parenting them. You can't say that. You got to separate the behavior from the individual.
Mm. So I think another tip would be is that with all that we said in the beginning, when you're working with other people's children, you have to recognize that they are not your children,
Yeah, they're not.
especially from an educator standpoint.
Right.
They are not your children, so you have to treat them according to policy. We operate in policy, so
They
you have to treat them
belong. Yeah.
in order according to policy, and not necessarily what they need or what you need. Tell them a piece of your mind, or give them a piece of your mind, or whatever they need to hear. You have to operate with the fact that you work for an entity, you work for a company, you work for whoever. You do some things with camps and cheering and things like that. When you're working with other people's children,
Hmm.
you have to stay neutral.
Yeah, I always say they belong to someone else. Um, and then what about my favorite? Do not mess your money up working with other people's children.
Explain.
So you are the educator. That is your role. You have to stay in your lane. And while you may find yourself getting upset, aggravated because of the student's response, they do belong to someone else. So remember that if you get out of line, if you break that policy, you could be talking about messing up your livelihood. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. I think that's good advice. When you're talking about, you know, you are working, to create, money for yourself
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. And I think that's why a lot of people don't. We have a lot of friends that say, I don't see how y'all do it, because they don't understand. They wouldn't be able to follow the rules that you need to follow when dealing with children.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. I mean, then these are people with children. I've also heard some people say, I don't even want to be around my kids that much. So I would say I want to be around other people's kids. It's just the truth. Um, but no, I think at some point after we've done it so long, you kind of learn these things, but you also, that's why I say it weighs on the mental emotional, because you can't operate with what you want to do. You got to operate with what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. Don't mess up your you know your livelihood, because a child has done something. And I think another thing that I would add to that is you have to outsmart children.
Explain that.
I say that all the time to people that I work with, is that don't let them outwit you. It sounds like Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Outwit, outsmart, outplay. But don't let them bring you to a level
Oh yeah.
where now you out of pocket. You know,
Splashing. We used to say that when we first
yeah,
started teaching. You
splashing.
splashing. Like
Yeah, splashing.
you yelling, and they keep then they want you to yell, and so you just keep yelling, and then you frustrated and you mad, and your kids looking at you like, so do we have to do this work or not? Because
Right,
you look like you packing up, getting ready to go home. Just breathe slow. It's other people's children.
right. I think we need to explain what splashing is, though.
Go ahead.
So splashing is a reality, is a analogy that was given to me actually when I first started.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't, yeah, I first started my first year teaching, and it was, when a little child sees a puddle, and they throw a rock in the puddle, or they stomp in the puddle. They want to see a reaction from the puddle.
Yeah. So they keep throwing.
They keep throwing things. As long as there's a reaction, they're going to keep throwing rocks in the puddle. They're going to keep stomping in the puddle to get a splash or reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes, the analogy given to me was don't splash. If you don't have, if they do something and don't get a reaction, then they'll move on to something else.
Right.
So going back to outsmart them, withstand, so some of the behaviors that you see.
Yeah.
Speaking of that too, I think another tip would be, old school methods, things that we did, or things that were done to us growing up, may not work. And I'm careful not to say educators, because there are a lot of people that aren't educators that work with other people's children.
Yeah.
You got camp counselors, you got summer camp people, you got after school, you got whatever. Um, but I think old school methods,
Yeah.
they may not work in this instance.
No, what popped in my head was, remember how you used to have to write lines? You have to write lines like
Yeah,
50 lines
I
or
wrote them on the
100
board. You had to
lines.
write lines on the
You write
board.
on board. You had to write them on notebook paper in cursive. Oh my God. Which we don't even teach cursive anymore. But like stuff like that, like it just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work.
That's your old school method. You write lines. That's what came to your head.
Writing lines.
Yeah.
Writing lines. You talking too much. I will not talk this much in class anymore.
No.
That's not gonna work. Because the way they like to text,
Hmm.
nah.
I mean, yeah, that's discipline and consequences. But I'm talking about, like, some of the interactions that you would have
They
that
would.
with kids now, that you can't have anymore. Like, of course, it's not appropriate to use profanity towards children,
Hmm.
but I can't say that profanity wasn't used towards people my age growing up. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not appropriate to use, because you got frustrated, to use profanity,
Yeah.
or even, I'll even take it another step, even raising your voice
Oh,
beyond
yelling.
beyond past, yeah, like yelling. And again, that that falls in that category of splashing. Like you really like you've gotten out of hand. You
Yeah,
you out of
yeah,
you out of pocket. They've gotten to you. They've gotten on your
yes,
nerves.
yeah.
And
Don't yell. Lower your voice. Lower your voice so that everybody has to get quiet. Everybody has to calm down to hear what you're saying. Whether you are a teacher, if you work with children, period. If you find yourself being frustrated, don't yell at them. Just lower your voice. They're going to have to get quiet.
yeah. So I think, another thing to add to that, um, as far as like those methods that don't work, getting out of hand, getting out of pocket, getting loose with your words. I think the flip side of that is when you're working with other people's children, they're not your friends.
No, they are
They're
not.
not your friends, and you are either you're employed to do a job.
Hmm. Or you're volunteering to do a job.
Right. So don't take it to where, you know, I can, and people oftentimes say, well, I just love kids and this and that, which is cool. Yes. I think we all love kids. I always say it keeps me young. It
Hmm.
keeps me,
Yep.
focused.
But you got to set those boundaries.
You gotta set
You got to
boundaries.
set those boundaries. You are the adult. Set the boundary. Establish what the perimeter is going to be, so that it
Hmm.
doesn't get into a space where it's kind of fuzzy. Like, that could be not right. Could be. I don't really know.
Yeah, no gray areas with
Yeah,
kids.
they got to know. We're not doing that.
Yeah. And I think another thing with that is consistency.
Yeah,
Like you have to be the model of consistency
as
and
much as you
structure
can.
and structure.
Yeah,
You
as
know,
much as you can, and understand that these are not necessarily trying to be perfect, right? But your goals that you're trying to reach.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's impossible to be perfect, but consistency. Like be that main stay in that setting for the children. I always say the gainfully employed adult has more responsibility to keep things working
Hmm.
than the children.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
um, taking things personally and getting too close with children. There has to be a thick line.
Yeah, you be
Uh,
consistent.
yeah.
Yeah, be consistent, so that the children can say, because most parents are consistent. Kids can go ahead and tell you, no, my parents not going to do that. If they do, then they're going to say this. When you're working with other people's children, you want to be consistent. You're not really there for likes. One thing you want them to be able to say, no, he or she, they are consistent.
Hmm. It's not a popularity contest.
No, 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 no.
And that's why I say it's the dirty. Again, it goes back to, I know some of the terms I use probably seem negative, but it is the dirty work because who don't want to be liked?
Mm-hmm.
Who don't want to hold court, as they say, and
Mm.
have the kids, all around you and having fun and all this stuff, but you have a job to do. And the kids need to know, children need to know, students, whoever it is, they need to know where those boundaries are.
Hmm. And I think when they know what the boundaries are, I think they can have fun and you can have fun. It creates a safer environment. And the I think the hard part about teaching is that the return on the investment, it takes time, right?
Yeah.
We have had the beauty of children that we have taught. Their children are in school now, so like we've seen these kids go through, so we've
Hmm.
been able to hear them say, you remember when, like, when we were in class and you wouldn't let us do this. Oh, I thought you were the worst. Now I get it. Now I understand,
Hmm.
and that's good.
Hmm.
So if anybody is watching, and you are an educator and you feel like, I feel like I'm the only one. I feel like I'm the only one that's trying to be consistent, that's trying to make sure that the children understand I'm the adult and they are the child. And I'm not trying to make any gray area. Just hold on. Just hold on, because the return on the investment is really, really good, and it's coming. It is coming.
So they're not going to be children. They're going to be adults much longer than they are children.
Yeah,
And I think that it's important that you establish, and work with that mindset
Mm-hmm.
that one day they're going to be adults
Yep.
and they're going to work. They're not going to always see the world like they see it now with you working when you're working with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the kids that come back, they say, oh yeah, I thought you were this, but thank you for working with me, thank you for helping me, thank you for showing me this and that, because they start to see now. But all it takes is one mistake, one mishap, one negative situation for them to establish their lifetime perception of you. I would rather be safe and consistent and almost boring
Mm-hmm.
than to be, try to focus on being fun and being, the life of the classroom, the life of the camp, and then risk overstepping, and crossing some lines, because you never get that back.
No, I think the biggest thing is because I think it has to do with personality too, and I would say it has to do with what are you doing, like what's your subject? Because some subjects lend themselves to be more engaging, more energetic. You got to be than others. So balance. It's important that reflection is key. I think when you reflect on what you're doing and you do a self evaluation of like how did this go today or how did this go this last class period. If you feel a little bit of a maybe I did a little bit too much. Okay, listen to that and make the adjustment. There's always room for improvement. And like you're saying, they're not
Mhm.
every day is not going to be fun. Every class that you teach, they're not going to think like you're the best thing since sliced bread. It's just going to happen. But that's okay because you are really hired to do a job,
Mhm.
to fill in gaps because that's what learning is, right? You fill in the gap between what they knew and what they did not know. You got to fill that gap in. So I don't really care, if you got cool songs and you got fist pumps, or if you're just at the door very stoic and good morning. Fill in the gap. However, that works for you. And last thing I would say is my tip is teaching. To me, it's like a team sport. Surround yourself with other people. And I say teaching, but working or being with other people's children, it should be a team sport. Find other people that are doing what you are doing, and some can be fresh in it, some can have been doing it for some time, but other people to talk through situations with, because if you don't work with other people's children, you don't always understand why things are done the way they are done. And sometimes people can critique what you do too hard because they don't have the background information that you have. They haven't been sitting in staff meetings. They don't understand the initiatives. They don't understand how policy works. And you just can't go and say, no, I'm not doing that. So try not to, don't do the job by yourself. Get you a good support group of people that, yes, when you need to vent you can vent, but also people that be like, okay, we're gonna stop being negative Nancy and negative Neil, and let's just try to take what we have and make it work.
Negative Neil.
And
Uh,
negative Nancy.
I heard negative Nancy. I don't think I heard a negative Neil.
Well, I think it's kind of one-sided if you always talk about negative Nancy, because men can be negative.
They can.
Yeah, negative Neil,
Mm.
negative Nate,
No.
negative Nelson.
Wow.
I can go on.
Okay. I think something to add to that, what you were saying, that's good. But I think just in general, um, not necessarily teachers or educators per se, but anybody that works with children, I think it's important to establish that relationship
Yeah.
and keep that relationship where it needs to be. You know, I feel that when you're working with other people's children, the very first thing you should think about is that you are an advocate for the parent.
Mm,
You are a um, not necessarily a fill-in for the parent,
right.
but you just reinforce what their parents have established in them.
Like support help. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, support help. Right. So, but yeah, you have to keep it there. Don't overstep.
Yeah.
Another piece of advice that I got a long time ago was don't take the parenting, don't
Mm.
take that parent
Parent
out
out
of
of
a
the parent.
parent situation.
Mhm.
If it's a parenting situation,
Mhm.
you give it to the parent and you back out.
If it's an educational situation, that's you.
Maybe,
If
maybe
that's
not.
maybe not.
I don't think you take the parent out of any situation,
Absolutely.
and you team up. You said team up with other people. I would add to that, you team up with the parent, and you
Yes.
you establish that relationship and you build that relationship so they'll know that you're just reinforcing what they have tried to instill in their child,
Mhm.
and don't take more steps than that. Again, it's a fine line. It's a delicate line. It's a delicate area to be in, but you have to establish that, and you have to keep that in the forefront
Mhm.
of your mind, and when you're dealing in those relationships.
Yeah, that's really good because I'm sitting here talking about the kids that we taught in the past, but we actually have worked with some. I mean, I know I have, you have, I've seen you do this. The parents of the children that we have, had the pleasure of working with in the past. Again, the parents were parenting. We
Hmm.
just provided the support in terms of the education, or if they had concerns, issues, if we didn't know, then we would pass that along to someone. So
Right.
you've never been able to really teach or work with other people's children without having the family. It is a village. That what is that African proverb? It takes a village to raise your child. It does take a village. You can't leave the
Hmm.
parent out.
No. I think this topic is important because I think we see more and more situations where it seems as if, because we're dealing with a lot of young adults that's working with children
Yeah.
now, and not only that, you're dealing with a lot of older people that have forgotten that some of those methods don't work anymore. So we're dealing with a different child. We're dealing with a different generation,
Hmm.
and you need to come. You need to add some more skills to your repertoire so that you can be productive,
Hmm.
and that the situation can stay positive. And so I think I think it's been some good tips for today.
Yeah.
You know,
Hope you guys like it.
it may seem like it was only for educators, but I just wanted to make sure that it was, something that everyone who works with kids can take something from.
Yeah, or maybe somebody might be listening to it because they know somebody that works with kids and they just want to, hey, they just want to take a listen. Again, open exchange is for everybody.
Yep, it's for everybody. All right, you guys. Thank you. See you next time.